It is a big step up from, beating up on a washed Anthony Smith, and before
Wow.
that, basically just facing like top. Look, is he not washed? He literally retired after
Brutal.
that, and he
Wow.
looked horrible. I'm sorry,
Scott's
it's just
coming
it
out
is
for
true.
blood today. Welcome back to Against the Cage, your MMA home where we bring you the latest news in combat sports and the biggest exclusive interviews, so make sure you like and subscribe if you don't want to miss any of that. My name is Jake Arrier. I'm joined here by my esteemed co-hosts Scott Fontana and Eric Richter. And guys, let's get right down to it. UFC 319 is in the rear view mirror, and Khamzat Chimaev just put on what can only be described as a dominant performance. And to take a quote from Joe, is this the Chimaev era? With that performance, do you see it as a result of the matchup, or is this an indicator that we can expect similar performances against new challengers? Scott, I'll start with you. What do you think about that?
So I think it's kind of parts of both, but I do lean more personally that I think this is a little bit more of the DDP defensive wrestling wasn't really quite up to snuff the way it ought to be against. Obviously, Jemiah's wrestling is amazing, right? It is what it is, but we have DC on the commentary pointing out, hey, there's some basic wrestling stuff that DDP could be doing. He's just not doing it. So there seemed to be a lot of deficiency there that maybe we weren't really aware of so pointedly as we are now. And also, I mean, just the simple strategy factor of him, being silly, jumping for those gillies. I don't know that that was the right path. Obviously, we heard from DDP in, ahead of the fight. He spoke to me and said, yeah, I'm going to be looking for the finish every time. And we saw that. That was absolutely true. But this probably wasn't the smartest play for him. And unfortunately, he gave away some earlier rounds that really built momentum the other way. And yeah, I don't think it was great. I think it'd be different against other opponents. Not sure how much different, but I imagine this is kind of like a picture perfect sort of wrestling versus defensive wrestling matchup for Chimaev.
Yeah, and Eric, I know you love your grappling. What did you think about that Chimaev performance and what we'll see in the future from it?
And it's funny because last week I came on the show and I said I wanted Dricus Du Plessis to pull guard and like try to keep his back away from getting taken.
2 hour shock
Nate
and
Diaz,
surprise.
yeah, well, so Nate Diaz said when he was talking to Sneeko that his whole game plan was to pull guard and he's like, I'm going to lose the decision anyway, so I might as well pull guard and see if I can get some submissions. Now, I agree. While I agree, Scott, that there was some wrestling things that Dricus Du Plessis could have done better. I think that Khamzat is just so damn strong. I mean, he's able to hold that crucifix position at such a high clip. It almost like I'd like to see like it didn't happen to Kamaru Usman, right? And I think that that is noteworthy. Kamaru Usman was able to stop takedowns, was able to win striking exchanges. Arguably, if that was a 5 round fight, I feel like you might have maybe said, hey, Kamaru maybe would win that fight against Khamzat. So I think that Khamzat's ideal matchup, if you're looking for a way to get past him, would be against a high level wrestler. We could talk about future opponents and who we think should go there, but in this specific matchup, I think that Dricus did a solid job cardio wise. I think that he could have done better in the technical aspects of the grappling, and I think that his coaching needs to maybe level up to the point where I saw at one point the coaches were talking about maybe changing things up in the next matchup, and I think that they do need to do that stylistically and strategically.
Yeah,
One thing I want to point out too, just off of what you said, with the strength and everything like that. I mean, that's, me as a non-wrestler, that's what I kind of interpreted as well. DDP spoke about kind of the way it felt for him, and he was saying it wasn't necessarily about how much strength or how strong Chimaev was, but really more just the anticipation of like whatever his next move was going to be. He was always a step or two ahead, and I think that's, at least from his own perspective, that's how he broke it down.
yeah. I guess on the ground pressure department, maybe that's what he was speaking to, but also like the fact that Dricus was getting put on the ground so many times. I think maybe that's what Eric you might have been speaking to as well, right?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Like the fact that he was getting taken down so much. That's also another aspect that you're
Well,
probably
he was
speaking
getting
to as
taken
well.
down so much and immediately put into side control,
Yeah.
like almost instantly. And like I said, I would really like to see him either go to guard, and also like when he was being turtled, he was sticking in that turtle position consistently. Now, in a weird way, and he does the 2-on-1 where he grabs one arm, and tries to like halt your movement. And they teach you this in jujitsu is, if you're going to be moving, move with a purpose. It didn't really seem like Dricus was moving with a purpose too often. It was just moving to survive. Whereas, and Hamzat, that's a credit to Hamzat's ability, especially in the crucifix and then in back control as well. So it's tough. Dricus looked better in the striking, but not like leaps and bounds better to the point where I thought that, the fight was going to end anytime that it was standing. I thought Hamzat did an okay job of keeping things,
I
at
feel like we
range.
probably would have liked to see a larger sample size, I guess, in striking exchanges. There wasn't a whole lot.
Yeah, and also, I mean, there's the fact that, and this will always be present with Chimaev, right? It is inherent to him. The fact that if the threat of the takedown is there, it is hard for him to get comfortable in those striking exchanges until he can show that he can resist them. He was not doing that. So there was really
Yeah.
not a whole lot of ways that he could even make that striking be as good as it should have been.
Right.
Yeah. Well, one more thing that keeps coming up and has come up for a while, and now we're finally here, is the thought of when Hamzat would become champion, or if he would become champion. He hasn't been very active these past few years. I mean, he's only fought 5 times, I believe, since that stretch where he fought 3 times
I think
in a
this is
row.
six
This
now.
is now 6. Okay, sorry, that number was in my head from last week.
Mhm.
But these things in terms of visa issues, injuries. He had a very tough battle with COVID. Obviously, that's out of the way, but he hasn't been used to fighting extremely frequently. Right now, after this fight, he said that he would like to fight in Abu Dhabi. He was talking some smack against Reinier de Ridder on social media. Immediately after that, RDR gets booked against Anthony Fluffy Hernandez, another potential contender. How likely do we see Hamzat either fighting in Abu Dhabi? I mean, there is that fight in Paris against Nassourdine Imavov and Caio Bahayo. But how likely do we see him being an active champ with this in mind? Eric, I'll start with you. What do you
I'm not
think?
expecting to see him this year by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not expecting to see him again this year. He's going to fight one time. As that'd be my guess. He fought October of last year against Robert Whitaker, where he obviously got that submission. And I believe that was an overseas card as well in the Middle East. And then, when you look at it through like into next year, right? Like I would be really surprised if they put a card on in Abu Dhabi where Tom Aspinall was on it as a co-main event, and then Hamzat was the main event. That just seems crazy to me.
Or the other
But
way
I mean, who
around,
knows?
even, yeah.
But who knows? Also, like this is the end of pay-per-view. Maybe they're just going to try to get like one more big pay-per-view bump out of it. Who knows? But I wouldn't expect to see him this year. I'd be really, really, really surprised. And then that would probably put us to like a February, March of next year. Maybe the first card on CBS, first numbered event on CBS. Um, that would be my expectation. And then it'd probably be the Imavov winner. If Imavov or Brahalio win, like whoever wins that fight, that would probably be the matchup to make. But I don't know. There's also different opinions on that. Some people might want to see RDR versus Fluffy winner face Hamzat. So it depends on where your perspective is. I'm not sure if you had one on that, Scott.
For me, I look at this as number one, I do see that a sliver of potential for them to be able to get that Abu Dhabi fight in because I think Dana he was sounding interested in it and open to it, right? A lot of times he'll shut that down. Did not necessarily do that. There is a sliver of hope that Imavov Bohalio fight that we already brought up, that's on September 6th. We're only 2 weeks away from that. 7 weeks or so, I believe it's 7 weeks later, is the Abu Dhabi card. It's a quick turnaround, especially to fight a monster like Chimaev. I don't know if that's going to be doable for the winner of that fight, but if the UFC wants that to happen, they often get their way, especially with guys like Imavov and Bahalia, who really just don't have a lot of negotiating power at this point. It could happen, but I do tend to side with you, Eric. I don't see it happening. I think it's a one time for this year. I have no idea when it would happen next year. But also another thing to kind of think about is, I mean, you're bringing up maybe they want to do one more big pay-per-view this year. I almost look at it as almost the other way. We only have 3 champions booked right now out of 11. So it almost seems like they're holding a lot of their cards for possibly the beginning of
Mm.
CBS rather than blowing them on this. They want to go out big with UFC or with CBS. I could see that. I have no idea. Or put Paramount, right? We don't know if it's CBS or Paramount. that deal. So I don't know. We'll see. But another factor in this too is the fact that Sean Strickland would actually be a very interesting quick turnaround opponent. The problem is his suspension in Nevada, which was indefinite. We now have word today he is suspended 6 months by the Nevada State Athletic Commission for his actions as a cornerman, going a little buck wild in the cage on June 19th, back a couple months ago. He can get cleared early, though. That's the thing. He can get cleared early, 4.5 months, if he completes anger management. I believe that is from the date of the
Yes.
violation. That would clear the way for an October 25th fight in Abu Dhabi. Just saying that there's a little runway here.
Yeah.
I believe that the 4.5 month would be November 14th, if my math was correct. I looked at it just
Oh,
before.
yes, you're right. I'm off by a month. You're right. Yeah,
Yeah,
Oh,
so
I
that's
okay.
off the
believe.
table. That's off the table.
Well,
Good job,
Well, it
Eric.
would
Nice to
open the
have you.
table up for MSG because I believe
uh,
that the 15th would be the MSG card in theory. I don't know when they have it booked for, but
I
well,
have to think they're not looking to do
right.
Sean Strickland if they can avoid it because he just had a title fight earlier this year, and he's also kind of been, that squeaky wheel about these title shots, right? I feel like the UFC is getting a little annoyed with that. They probably are looking to use some of these big fights that they've been booking, but you never know, right? Who knows? There's some
Yeah.
options.
one thing that I will say that Eric, you kind of referenced earlier in terms of if Hamza was actually ready to go for that Abu Dhabi card, which is not a given, right? And if his opponent was ready for that, which is also not a given, I do agree with like. I still don't think it would be Hamzat over Tom Aspinall if they put them on there, but just regardless, I think having both of those on that card, it's like, yeah, they usually stack Abu Dhabi pretty well, but that's a lot. Like the UFC typically won't put too many eggs in one basket, but who knows?
But if they're going to put anybody in Abu Dhabi, it's going to be the current Abu Dhabi national,
Yes.
um, Khamzat Chimaev, or excuse me, United Arab Emirates national, I should say, to be very specific there.
Yes. Yeah. So no, that's a fair point, but we'll see what happens with that, and I think we'll probably get some more answers following UFC Paris in September. But let us know in the comments, what do you guys expect from this Khamzat Chimaev era? Do you think we are in a Khamzat Chimaev era? What do you expect for the future of the light heavyweight division? Now, the other man at the end of the octagon, Dricus Du Plessis. Tough night in the office for him. Dricus Du Plessis' coach, Morn Visser, he said that their goal is getting back to that title, but not immediately. They're not looking for an immediate rematch. He was basically saying they want to get one in, get Dricus, to fix some of the issues that he might have in terms of the wrestling department. He said that Hamzat's Russian wrestling was the main thing that they have to work on. What do you think his path should be back to the middleweight strap?
Honestly, I think he should get 2 fights in. I think one is even pushing it. Especially right now, it's going to be hard to get one fight and go because number one, he lost so lopsidedly to Shimaev. Nobody's clamoring for that fight. And number two, it just gives him extra time to get up to snuff with that kind of thing. And frankly, it's also a very crowded field, right? There's a lot of men who could justifiably say, I might have more to offer Khamzat Chimaev than Dricus Du Plessis did because we saw what he had to offer and it wasn't that much. And I think it's a win-win for everybody if they can actually manage to get it to be 2 fights. I don't know what numbers that was, but that was two. We'll go with two. Uh, so I don't know. We'll see. But he's really gonna have to crunch on that. There's a lot of ground to make up.
I agree. Eric, your thoughts before I make go off of that.
My ideal matchup for Du Plessis was actually I could totally see him fighting Sean Strickland. Um, Comes out of that with a win. Maybe he gets like let's just really project it out. Say Imavov gets the title shot against Hamzat early next year, and then Du Plessis beats Strickland. Then maybe Fluffy Hernandez, or it could be Fluffy Hernandez, could be Borjalio, it could be DeRitter, but Du Plessis faces one of those three in order to get a rematch. That's a lot of hoops and ladders. The thing for Du Plessis at this point is that he now goes into a murderer's row of contenders. Middleweight's in a better position. We went over this last week. Middleweight's in a better position now than it's ever been, arguably.
Or in a while, at
Definitely
least.
the best that it's been within the
In
last
a
five
while.
years. Yeah, it's in a really good spot. There's a lot of really good contenders. So when you look at it, it's like, DeRitter was the champ. Now he goes back into the fold with a lot of killers coming up. So it's it's tough. It's a tough loss, especially to lose that lopsidedly. There's definitely a lot of things that he can work on, but he's a really good athlete. He's definitely not small for the division, and he's well-rounded. He's not like I don't think anyone else is going to out grapple him the way that he was in this fight.
Sure.
So that's a positive as well. It's not out of the realm of possibility. He's definitely not. This isn't the last we've seen of Dricus Du Plessis.
Yeah, agreed. But I think sort of to Scott's point as well is the permutations are just kind of one fight like to put him back in there with Chimaev when there's these like to your point as well, Eric, like there's just so many good contenders in that top 5, top 10. Like it's so stacked. So it's like how
You know,
can
in
you
other divisions, I think that that's fair to ask for one fight than a rematch. But this division's too loaded. It's a
Yeah,
product of being. It's a product of your environment.
yeah,
The environment is this is a stacked division, and there's a bunch of fighters that deserve title shots, not
fresh
just you.
matchups, yeah. So I think we're all in agreement. As long as it's not, I don't want to see a third Sean Strickland fight. That's at least not now. That's I can get something newer, personally. But as far as just wrapping up this DDP and Khamzat main event, Scott, you are our resident judging expert. I saw a lot of discourse on social media about the scoring of 10-8s because this was such a dominant performance. There were 10-8s kind of flying all around there, but in different rounds. Can you break down for us the 10-8s discussion in this fight?
I mean, it's not just social media, right? I mean, the commentators seem a little confused about it at times. They're not really relaying the information specifically very well about, let's say, the new scoring criteria that we already talked about very recently. Even Dana White giving out, oh, I'd give out 4 10-8s in this fight, I believe is what it was. The first 4 rounds he had as a 10-8, right? Um, there's a lot of confusion. Let me try to help out. And here's a little bit of a metaphor I'll give you guys. Imagine that the door to a 10-8 is locked. The key is you need high degree of damage. That's what damage means. It doesn't just mean you're doing damage. For the 10-8, it has to be a high degree of damage, right? So did we get that passed in any of these rounds? Because you can pile up dominance all you want, as much as Khamzat Chimaev did, but he's not doing a whole lot of damage in any of these rounds except for that third round. That was the one where I watched live and I said, okay, now he's really starting to hurt him. He's bloodying him up. He's actually doing some real damage and landing with a lot of harder strikes. And that's where I gave my 110-8, and that's how all 3 judges gave that round a 10-8. That's what we need to see. That's how our compass points now. Look at round 3 and look how different it is from round 1 in particular, because those are very similar rounds, the way they developed. The difference is the damage. Crazy thing is, though, from the Dana White perspective, especially for him to give out 4 10-8s here and not have the ability to because of the way the scoring changed. The scoring changed. The way the rules changed for the scoring changed 4.5 years ago because of Dana White's criticism of too many 10-8s, because they were being given out for, in particular, a fifth round with Jan Blachowicz and Israel Adesanya, which definitely was not an 8, shouldn't have been an 8. 2 out of 3 judges gave it an 8. He went to town on it, thought it was terrible. And then ever since then, we had the judging community and the regulatory community. They reacted, they changed it. Now you can't get it for just dominance. That's the Dana White ripple effect. So he has only himself to thank.
Fair enough. Yeah. I
And
mean,
I'll just.
yeah, continue.
Oh, you go, Jake.
I was the first round. I was seeing a lot of 10-8s being given there from different media personalities, and I will say I was proud that after our discussion, I was like, you know what, I don't think that's a 10-8. So just a
Look
little,
at that.
yeah,
There's
Yeah.
potential to learn.
yes, Eric, what were
Yeah.
you gonna say?
Well, I'll toot my own horn as well. When we always submit scorecards during the fight. I had it 30-26 after round 3. I'm proud of that, and that's where it ended up on every other judge's scorecards. I'll just throw out some of the striking numbers: 131 not significant, 131 total strikes in the first round by Khamzat Chimaev. Only 2 of them were classified as significant, but he was only hit by 3 strikes, and only 3 strikes were thrown by Dricus Du Plessis in that first round. And then the second round, 6 strikes were landed by Dricus Du Plessis. 79 strikes, not significant strikes, were landed by Khamzat Chimaev. And then, the third round was obviously the higher degree of damage, as Scott was referring to. 19 significant strikes for Khamzat Chimaev in round three, 156 total strikes. So just an incredible volume display, but not a whole lot of damage. Now, that the interesting part about it was, and Scott, this is a question for you. The position of crucifix was so dominant that elbows were so like there could have been there if you wanted them. And then, there was no submission attempts recorded, but it seemed like he was close to one all the time. Why would that not get 10-8, considering Du Plessis didn't do a whole lot in any of the first three rounds?
Because again, it really comes down to damage. And when we're talking about submission attempts, we're not saying, oh, he went for a rear naked choke or he went for an armbar. We're talking about one of those that, let's say, got in a high danger scenario or left, maybe an armbar gets just a little extended, but they were able to get out of it, right? That's damage. And that's the
Hmm.
key difference here. Just going for, a rear naked choke or something like that, that's really like, imagine you get it over the mouth here, right?
Right.
I mean, there's ways to crank it and maybe you could do some damage there. But frankly speaking, that is generally not going to be a high percentage play to win that fight in that scenario. It's probably most of the time not going to be scored very heavily at all because it's not very close. When you're talking about those striking numbers in particular too, obviously you're designating the difference between what UFC calls significant and what they classify as just the general total. Um, but the high level of striking there, that disparity is more about dominance, right? Dominance is like I have asserted control over this fight, either in a striking or in a grappling phase, or both. Um, but the damage is what's left behind. The cuts, the bruising, being knocked down or stumbled clearly from those strikes. That's the damage they're looking for. And if you don't have it, you're really not supposed to give that D. And again, that door that I'm talking about stays locked.
I got one more. In
Hmm.
terms of grappling dominance, would you say that this was more dominant than Habib versus Edson Barboza? Maybe that's a homework assignment for the future. I don't know if you've seen it, Jake. But Edson Barboza versus Habib was
No.
crazy, and this Hamzat fight was pretty interesting too. So I'm interested to know which was more in terms of grappling dominance. And hey, give me some comments if you have a different option to everyone who's watching. Um, but which is more dominant?
Like I was there for that fight. I was in the building for that fight.
Really?
Or no, I'm thinking of the Michael Johnson fight. Excuse me, I'm thinking of a different fight. Which
Two
was
Dana,
good ones.
also a very dominant
Dana,
fight,
give
Two
me
right?
good
title
ones.
shot. I need title shot.
Yeah. A
Yeah,
lot, a
yeah.
lot of these fights, a lot of Habib fights were very similar in that respect. I don't remember offhand what A to B, which one I would put one above the other. I mean, they're probably in the same range, but realistically, dominance is a high degree if you're having your way on the ground with someone, you're having grappling dominance, right? And that's what he did. But again, it's still that damn. It used to be before they changed these rules. You could have given a round like that, two Ds dominance and duration, but not the damage because the dominance is such a high degree over the entire duration of the round. This would be almost a no-brainer 10-8, but they changed it like 2 weeks ago. We can't do it anymore. It's off the
Right.
books.
Wow, there we go. So, I mean, this kind of answers one of the questions that I had last week in terms of like, are we going to see any significant changes in terms of what
This
decisions
was it.
actually get made? And you saw that on Saturday night.
You
Also,
wouldn't have seen much of it anyway. Like, again, the judges are basically doing what they were doing before. Now it's just official.
okay, fair enough. So that adds even some more clarification there. But as far as what else we saw on Saturday night in that co-main event, we saw Lerone Murphy have a pretty picture perfect spinning elbow just after Carlos Praches had a pretty picture perfect spinning elbow against Jeff Neal. Two spinning back elbows back to back. I mean, I think we could all be pretty happy with that in terms of a viewing standpoint. But Lerone Murphy, now 10 UFC fights unbeaten, 9 straight wins in a row. His first fight being a draw. But listen, Movsar Evloev, he's also at 9 wins in a row. He was kind of touted as the next rightful heir to a UFC title shot or a featherweight title shot. Lerone Murphy, do you think that he should be the next title challenger? Scott, I'll throw it to you. What are your thoughts on that?
I'll keep it brief because I'm actually curious what Eric thinks as well. But I'm going to say yes. I think now he has the resume to match Movsar Evloev, but he's also got the activity. He's got the finishes. It's definitely a more appealing resume now, and I think it's unfortunate that Evloev did get skipped over, but at this point, he can't even make it scheduled fights. I mean, that's going to be hard to that's a hard pill to swallow when you've got somebody who actually truly does look like they stack up in terms of, their qualifications for this. So. I don't see it. And it does sound like, I mean, this fight, wherever it is, Volk wants to fight in December. He's been talking about December. I could see it happening there. What do you think, though, Eric? Am I off base here, or you on board?
Well, the Aaron Pico fight was pretty interesting. It was kind of the Aaron Pico experience inside of 2 minutes. Looked amazing for 2 minutes, and then just a brutal knockout. And I don't know if anyone saw what Daniel Cormier said afterwards, but they said that the knockout was so bad that it's such a hard time getting him up that his jaw was locked and they couldn't take out his mouth guard for several minutes afterwards. This is going to be This is Aaron Pico's, career in a nutshell. It has been incredible skills, incredible ability, and then flash KO. So when you look at Lerone Murphy, it's like, yeah, like this is an amazing knockout, but it's happened to Pico so many times against worse opponents. So it's tough for me to get over the Evloev thing. But as you say, Scott, Evloev can't show up. He's 3 fights of his last 5 scheduled bouts, 3 of them have been canceled.
Wow.
He can't show up. So he's undefeated and 9-0 in the UFC.
So is
But
Lerone
this
Murphy.
is this is a spot where the U and let's just add to that. I tweeted it at the time. Aljamain Sterling versus Evloev was on the prelims. Aljamain Sterling was just the champion coming off of a KO to Sean O'Malley, and they put Sterling for when he was headlining a card. They put him on the prelims of a pay-per-view. I believe it was UFC 310. So that tells you a lot of what they think about Movsar Evloev. He was given a prelim spot on a pay-per-view, not even a main card spot, and then he has to pull out again. So to say that Evloev is going to get a title shot just seems crazy at this point. I would be shocked if he did. It's going to be Lerone Murphy. That was a crazy knockout, and you know the featherweight division's kind of changed massively now.
I was
I've got something I want to kick to Jake actually,
okay.
because something off of what you said, Eric, the fact that, how much does it mean that he did this against Aaron Pico? We've seen this happen from Aaron Pico before. Jake has not seen this from Aaron Pico before. Jake is newer to Aaron Pico, and honestly, there are going to be a lot of people who did not watch Aaron Pico in Bellator, so they don't really know what this means. All they know is this dude came in super hyped. They threw him in against someone who'd already been headlining fight nights. He goes out there and he knocks him out with a highlight reel KO. I think this is going to actually do a lot for him, and I think you can throw out what happened with Aaron Pico before in terms of what that means.
Yeah, I would have liked to see more from Aaron Pico in terms of just like being an MMA fan, and hearing all this stuff about him. It was tough. Like he looked good. He looked confident. I mean, it was a feeling out
Oh,
process. It kind of seemed.
confidence has never been the issue for Aaron Pico, let me tell you. It is
Yeah,
always firefight. I'm gonna run at you, but he's an amazing grappler. He's also a Golden Glove boxer, so he's got all the talent in the world. But it is all fire. He is coming right at you all the time,
yeah.
and we saw it. It's a problem sometimes.
Live by
There
the
was
sword,
There's a
die
lot of
by the
Golden
sword.
Gloves boxers, though.
fair. I would say his boxing has really improved since we first saw him. Obviously, he was what 19 when we first saw him, so that's not saying a whole lot. It should improve. But Pico is it's the enigma. I said it last week. I predicted Lerone Murphy was going to win this fight. I've been down the song and dance with Aaron Pico so many times. I can't do it anymore.
Well, so that goes to my next question, and Scott, thank you for bringing it up in terms of coming from me. It helps to have you two here to break it down.
A
Given
lot of people don't have us.
yes,
Hopefully, you're listening. You do.
yeah. Now those at home, you've got Scott and Eric now, but. Is he ever going to break through? Because you've kind of alluded to that this is a bit of a trend. This fight sums up sort of his career in one go. Eric, I'll throw it back to you. What do you think?
It's a bad spot for Aaron Pico, man. I would have liked to see him throw him against somebody that would maybe that like someone lower in the division. I just don't understand the matchmaking, and I think that is also part of a better, a bigger discussion. Was like, why are we throwing all of these guys who are, credentialed high level mixed martial artists, throwing them against the wolves of the UFC? We saw it with Patchy
I
Mix.
got an
I
answer
didn't
for that
love
in a
that
minute. We'll go back
matchmaking.
to that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I didn't love the Patchy Mix matchmaking. I know that we've have some disagreements on that, but is Aaron Pico ever going to break through? I would like to see him fight like Dan Ige next and see if he can win that fight. That's a major step down in competition. That should be like, and if you look at Aaron Pico's odds history, like he was like minus 2,000 against like pretty much every opponent, and even when he would lose, like he'd come off of a loss and still be a minus 2,000 favorite. The love for him was so high when he was at Bellator that they would ignore all of his defensive deficiencies. And I know he's fighting with Arman Tarzoukian and Khamzat Chimaev over in California. And Scott, you might know, but I don't know if that's a change in camp or if that's who he's been with this whole time. I have an issue with the style. I have an issue with, the firefights. I would like to see him mix in like more grappling, less forward pressure actually, which is bizarre because you don't really see that. I don't think he has the chin like especially after, he's 13-5. It's no longer a situation where he's gonna, have this crazy record. He's 13-5. It isn't working. Let's change it.
What do you think, Scott?
Man, you hit the nail on the head. It's all about the chin. I mean, there is basically no chin. It's always going to be his kryptonite that stops him from becoming the Superman that I think we think he can become, if not for that. I should also point out you brought up the boxing. Hey, he got knocked out by an elbow, dude. Ain't no elbows in boxing. That's part of the problem. Is I think maybe could it be that he's just not as diverse with his recognition of certain strike? I don't know. It could just been the scenario, but the real issue is just the fact that he cannot take these hits. We're 8 years in to his career. I don't know how much more he's going to drastically change as a fighter. I know he's 20, he's going to be 29 in a few weeks. He's still young, but again, 8 years of professional MMA experience is a lot to get good and bad habits here. I just see him as a great hammer, but a bad nail. And I do think he gets a get right fight next. I hope it's even much lower in the rankings, hopefully an unranked opponent next time. I think he should be built up slowly if they ever want to get anything out of him.
Well,
Mm.
to tie the bow on this Aaron Pico thing, Scott, you did say that you had some thoughts about these newcomers having some stiff competition. Pico is the third in like very recent memory to have this happen to him. Eric, you mentioned Patchy Mix. Patricio Pitbull also had a pretty similar experience in his debut at 314. Scott, what are your thoughts on this before we move on?
There is a long and storied history of the UFC bringing in new hyped talent and throwing them into the fire and saying, hey, let's see what you do. And the reason is this: it gives the UFC a win-win scenario. If they get a victor out of the fight, they get to justify the hype and make a bigger star out of this person. Take Michael Chandler, for example. I think he's like a really good recent example of that. Or there's on the other side where they fall short and they get to continue to hammer home, reinforce this narrative that this is the big leagues now. You're in the UFC. The UFC is different. It's not Bellator. It's not Strikeforce. It's not World Series of Fighting. It's not any of these things. It is the UFC and it is different. We've seen it a billion times and they love doing it. And frankly, it always works.
I'll piggyback off of that and say that Vince McMahon used to do this in the WWF with WCW, wrestlers or whatever. He would basically always book the WCW guys to lose, and or just make them look stupid in some way. Dana White taking a page out of Vince McMahon book. Go figure.
Well, there we go. And to tie a bow on UFC 319, there's a new segment that we are introducing called Haymakers. Sometimes we leave, there we go. Sometimes we leave certain topics with maybe some stuff still, on our chest that we want to get off. And this is our outlet to do so. So, guys, do you have any haymakers on UFC 319 before we wrap up?
I got a haymaker I could throw out there. And it
Alrighty.
involves Carlos Prates. And here's the thing with Carlos Prates, right? He goes out there and he gets a absolute highlight reel spinning elbow knockout. No brainer. We're talking about this already in the greater conversation for knockout of the year. It's immediate. Everybody knows it. And the first thing he has to do when he gets on the mic is he has to beg for that 50K bonus. Why should he have to beg for something that is just so painfully obvious? This man should go out there and have to, and he should just be able to understand, like, yo, I did something highlight reel. I know I'm gonna get rewarded. But they all know that they have to beg and they have to, kiss the ring and show just how important it is that they get the money from Dana White as this gift, right? This bonus. It's a little stupid. If it's not that necessarily every knockout needs to have a bonus attached to it. If Dana doesn't want to do that, which he's expressed disinterest in, fine. But man, there should be a lot of just I know it's a highlight reel. Anything that we're gonna start getting amazed about, these fighters should feel comfortable that they could actually get really rewarded for it, and it kind of bothers me that that's just not the case.
Mic time is very valuable, and to have to use it on that, I agree. That is it's not a waste of time because it has a direct financial interest, but it shouldn't have to happen. I agree.
Yeah, fair enough. Alrighty, well, let us know in the comments for you at home. What are your haymakers? What are some things that you have coming off of 319? Let us know in the comments. But listen, that is UFC 319 wrapped up. Looking ahead to this weekend, we've got UFC Shanghai going all the way over to China to watch Johnny Walker versus Zhang Mingyang. And this is a bit of a sleeper card, guys. Not just because of the talent that's on the card, but I will literally probably be asleep during the vast majority of these fights because the prelims start at 3 a.m. to accommodate for the local market. The
Eastern time.
Yes, Eastern time, not in China. Yeah, 3 a.m. Eastern time. The main card doesn't start till 6 a.m. or starts as early as 6 a.m., I should say. So I might be waking up for the co-main event or the main event. Guys, I got to ask you, Scott, I'll start with you, or just if you have any thoughts as well, Eric. Will you guys be waking up for this fight? What are you trying to catch for this card, Scott?
I'm trying to catch some Z's. That's what I'm doing. I will catch it later. It will be on demand and I can get it whenever I want to. Late morning, afternoon, whatever. I can watch at my leisure. The pacing is great when you get to do it that way. That's fantastic about this. But I do like watching live. I'll be disappointed I'm not watching live, but I'll be grateful that I slept.
Eric, how about you? You going to catch any of these?
Yeah, I have a fantasy football draft at 8:30, so I might be up at like 7. So maybe I'll catch some of the main card. Just as I prep for my fantasy football league, but that's about it.
I also
Man.
have a
I
draft
mean,
on Saturday.
Oh, there we go. I got mine done
yeah,
pretty early.
I'm not waking up at 3 a.m. I would love to watch, Kyle Dawkins versus Michelle Pereira or any of the other. This is a really good card, and I'm almost bummed out that they did this. Like, why is Brian Ortega versus Aljamain Sterling even on this card? I got questions.
Well, before you give your thoughts, Scott, I do want to ask you, in cases when you do have to watch something later, do you just not check your phone, or do you just kind of let it happen? And sometimes you find out if you find out, and that doesn't ruin the fun for you that much.
Depends on the card. If there's a fight that I really don't want to watch, I will actively avoid it, or I'll, maybe I can turn off notifications or sleep
Or that you don't want to
notifications
get
or that kind
spoiled,
of thing,
you mean.
right? Yeah, exactly. But generally I do just try to avoid it in those cases. And then I'll get to it when I'm ready. Or, sometimes you just get spoiled. And look, if it's not a pay-per-view, I can kind of live with it.
Right.
True story. When Conor McGregor fought Dustin Poirier for the third time, I was in the woods on a camping trip with family and friends. And so I was literally in the dark and away from my phone
You were
to
in
be
the
able to
dark.
avoid it completely. I was in the dark. I was out in the woods.
Metaphorically.
And when I got home, I asked my wife, I'm like, listen, do me a favor. I just want you to go into ESPN. Just go find that fight and just put it on for me.
Yeah,
So I was able to watch that unspoiled.
that's
That's
great.
awesome. That was a tough night for me.
Wives are great. I love my wife.
I was in Atlantic City. That wasn't my favorite night.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
But I guess getting back to this main event, Zhang Mingyang, coming off of a very good performance against Anthony Smith. He's now ranked 14th in the rankings, and he's coming up against the number 13th ranked Johnny Walker. Do you guys think that he's ready for ranked competition? Scott, I'll start with you. What do you think about this matchup for him?
It is a big step up from, beating up on a washed Anthony Smith, and before
Wow.
that, basically just facing like top. Look, is he not washed? He literally retired after that, and
Wow.
he looked horrible. I'm sorry.
Scott's
It's just
coming
it
out
is
for
true.
blood today.
Look, I have nothing against Anthony Smith, but we saw what we saw. I don't think anything's wrong about what I said.
Fair enough.
But
No.
also like the fact that Zhang Mingyang has really, other than that, he hasn't faced anybody inside of like the top 80 really before. So at 205 pounds, it's a giant step up, I think. But as far as tests go, I think it's a winnable one, and I think it's a good litmus test for where he's at. I can't think of anyone he needed to go to before he gets this fight. I'm cool with it.
Eric, what about you?
That's the hottest you've ever come out. You didn't say anything wrong, Scott, but that was the hottest you've ever come out. Is like just very bluntly.
I
I
like
actually
it.
kind of liked it. I'd like to see more of that. But you know,
Bro.
Zhang Mingyang fighting Johnny Walker here, and Johnny Walker's been, having he's had better times, right? At one point they were saying that he could, compete for a title. Again, kind of like the Aaron Pico thing. There's athleticism, there's power, and there's no chin. Yeah, in terms of like how I see this fight playing out, I think that Ming Yang is obviously a big time favorite here, minus 375. Can he win it? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's been money coming in on Johnny Walker in the betting community. So like those odds have actually shrunk a little bit. Ming Yang was a little bit of a bigger favorite before. From my perspective, I mean, Ming Yang is very raw, but he's very young and he's got a lot of talent. Like he's a blue belt in jiu-jitsu. He's a light heavyweight, so that might be able to get by, but he is a blue belt in jiu-jitsu fighting professionally. So that tells you a lot. Like he's gonna have problems against like Alonzo Menafield. He's gonna have a problem grappling against a guy like that. So I think this is a very winnable matchup. Johnny Walker's probably not going to be shooting for takedowns very often. So you're looking at a striking match. Crazy one though is this fight to end in 1.5 rounds is like 75% according to the odds makers. That's like almost unheard of. I honestly have never seen it.
I was going to say, like, I do see a knockout happening in this fight, but that even that stat is pretty nutty. But listen, we've also got, like you mentioned before, Eric, a bit of a surprising fight to me as well when I found out that this fight was booked for this card. Brian Ortega versus Aljamain Sterling, and not just that is surprising. It's 5 rounds. Aljamain Sterling actually did a interview with MMA Fighting, and he said that it is actually. I think there's an expletive in there, but actually stupid, I'll say, that it is 5 rounds. For non-title fights, especially even co-main events being a 5-round fight, what do you guys think about that, yay or nay? Scott, and then Eric, what do you guys think?
I don't think it's so effing stupid that he that it's a 5 round fight, but I do understand his perspective. I'm going to say that because, frankly, I don't know how much these fighters are compensated all that differently if they have to fight 2 extra rounds, and there's not definitive, clear stakes impacting the title picture. So, why is he doing it? He's not the main event. Is You don't get the rub of at least your name is on the billing. I think at least there are some vague title stakes here. If Aljo wins, potentially the way he looks and the way, Movsarivlev is not making his way into the cage, maybe he does leapfrog the guy who beat him back in December and he starts to look like an attractive title challenger on the horizon. He's a former champion. I think he's got stuff to gain, but again, I sort of get it. I like the 5 rounds. I do. I just want them to be compensated right.
Fair enough. Eric, how about you?
I don't understand why the fight's on the card at all, to be honest. I just like this could have been like a main event on pretty much any fight night, and then it would have made more sense to be 5 rounds. Difference between 3 and 5 should actually probably help Sterling because Ortega, at this point in his career, he's kind of like the same fighter that he was 5 years ago. Like he hasn't no noticeable improvements on the feet, where it's a clear difference. So Aljo's like if there's some way where Ortega's winning, a round or two, like to see Ortega winning a decision, a 5 round decision at that against Sterling, who's probably a better grappler, certainly a better offensive wrestler, has just as good as of back control as Ortega, and Ortega's willing to play guard. This is a pretty easy fight for Sterling, all things considered. He's a minus 310 favorite in the betting market, and that sounds about right.
I wonder if we'll be seeing him in your 3 bets in 3 minutes. So we'll stay tuned for that one.
Undefeated last week, by the way.
Oh, there we go. Okay, we'll get there. We'll get there. But guys, there's a whole other bunch of fights that are on this card. What are your fights to watch?
You know what? Give me Michelle Pereira against Kyle Dawkins. We already got the shout out from Eric on that one. I like the return of the Darce Knight here against someone who, frankly, can be very entertaining, and also sometimes it doesn't go that way. But I think the style matchup here can create fun no matter where the fight goes. So I like this one a lot.
Eric, how about you?
Charles Johnson versus Loner Kavanaugh. That's an interesting one. Charles Johnson, obviously, like if every fight was 35 minutes, if it was a little bit, if it was 7 rounds, I feel like Charles Johnson would be undefeated. He's got really good cardio. Obviously, this is a 3-round fight. 5'9" versus 5'4" has a big size advantage. So might hear some more about that one later.
Alrighty, there we go. And Scott, it is about that time. I haven't forgotten. What is our event rating for UFC Shanghai?
We have a 32, and I don't know how that sounds to you guys, but it's actually one of the stronger cards that they've held in China. I think that is why we have Aljamain Sterling against Brian Ortega on this card. It helps strengthen this card in the Chinese market. I think they do want to have some watchable fights for the people over there that aren't just locals, right? Great top 3 fights on the card from a ranking standpoint, especially, or well, in addition to the ones we already talked about, Sergey Pavlovich against Waldo Cortez Acosta. This is a top 10 heavyweight fight.
Yeah.
Local prospects down the card weigh it down, but I think it's still a solid fight night.
Alrighty, thank you for that, Scott. And yeah, I think that ranking makes sense.
A little lower than I thought, I'll be honest. The Pereira Dawkins fight on the prelims, I thought would bump that up.
I think it's just got to be the
But
local
it's the
talent.
problems with all those the locals. Yeah, they weigh it down. They like to put those on. And granted, the Chinese market
sense.
loves it. They eat it up, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
yeah, that's what it is.
Well, thank you for that, Scott. And Eric, now it is time for your recurring segment. You just mentioned it before. Your 3 bets in 3 minutes. Give it to us.
Yeah, let's talk about the betting picks for this weekend. I'm going to go back to last week or the week before. We're 5 of our last 6. Last week we hit Drakkar close by decision plus 250 against Edson Barbosa. Got that one. Alexander the Great Hernandez. I was on Chase Hooper from the get. I added more over the weekend. Made a bunch of money there. And honestly, the line moved against me. The sharps didn't like the pick, but I felt really good about Chase Hooper. His willingness to strike, maybe getting him into trouble. It did. He got knocked out at the end of the first round. So I think we had that at plus 260. He went, and I think Hernandez closed around plus 350. Like, there was some big money coming in on Chase Hooper. So we're happy about that. Like, we get that, and we get Michael Page by decision. 3 for 3, clean sweep. We're going to go for it again here. And let's start with the co-main event. 3 bets in 3 minutes. Put it on the clock. Aljamain Sterling here is fighting Brian Ortega. And I know we talked about this already. Brian Ortega hasn't really gotten a lot better in his UFC career. And it's a little disappointing, especially when he first came in. He looked like he was going to be a world beater in terms of the grappling. He's like, oh, if his striking reaches that level of grappling, he's going to be a problem. It hasn't really happened, at least yet. We haven't seen it. For me, I think Aljamain Sterling's wrestling chops are good enough, and he's every day in there with Merab Dvalishvili. Like, he is not in a position where I feel like he's going to get front headlocks, which is kind of like the path to victory for Ortega. Is like Aljo comes in for wrestling and Brian Ortega hits a Darce choke or goes for guillotine. I hate the idea of playing off your back, and Ortega likes doing it. Maybe he gets a triangle choke here and Aljamain Sterling gets submitted for the first time. It's possible. I just don't see it likely. I'm going to go Aljamain Sterling wins and the fight to start round 3, minus 150 over at Fanatic Sportsbook. And I really don't see too many paths to victory here for Brian Ortega. So that should be good. So that's best bet number 1. Best bet number 2, Charles Johnson fighting Loner Kavanaugh. Kavanaugh does not strike me as somebody that is going to beat you on volume, especially here. Charles Johnson, obviously, bigger, right? He's 5'9", 70-inch reach. Kavanaugh, I believe, is listed at 5'5", 67-inch reach. Charles Johnson's got the best cardio in the game. Now, I'm going to take him by decision, but it's totally possible that he drops round 1 and you can get him at like a plus 400 spot to win the next 2 rounds. Totally possible, but let's not forget here, Charles Johnson, he's the last person to beat Joshua Van, go figure. And, when there's another guy on this card, Sumadri, excuse me for butchering that name, but he looked really good in that fight too. Also mixed in some grappling, which I liked. But he's striking is not that bad. And I just don't see Kavanaugh really getting off in the way that in the power department to put Johnson away. I think Johnson, the vet lesson, right? You're going to give him a vet lesson here. Charles Johnson by decision plus 320. I don't hate a live play if you want to see how the first round plays out. And then last, we're going to a prelim fight way down on the card. Kiefer Crosby, 0-2 in the UFC with 2 submission losses. Takes on Tylake Nugieri. Definitely butchered that too. Apologies. Crosby is a striker first. He's an Irishman. And, 2 submission losses, definitely not what you're looking for. But, from the tapes that I was able to do, right? I didn't watch his road to the UFC fight live. But from what I've seen, he's more of a striker, and I actually kind of fancy myself as looking at Crosby here as maybe the A side of a striking exchanges. Now, if Nuraji decides to wrestle, he will probably win. And if he is better at wrestling than I think he is, than what I've seen in his tape study, then I'll eat that. But I'm going to take a long shot here. I think Crosby takes this one. I actually think Crosby by decision is the play. I think Crosby has, he's a little bit older. He's going to be able to kind of set up his shots a little bit more. I mean, look, Crosby's 35. He's been in the game for a long time. But I think that this is a decent spot for him where he can kind of make it close. I think 17-1 is a crazy value. And I'll take Crosby by decision at plus 1,700. That was your 3 bets in about 3 bets.
Alrighty, so thank you so much for that, Eric. That wraps up UFC, and we're on to PFL finals. These are the last PFL finals. So next week we'll talk about a little bit more about how this tournament format went, but let's look ahead to Thursday night tonight. We've got heavyweight, light heavyweight, and middleweight starting tonight, 9 p.m. main card Eastern, and 6 p.m. for the early card, ESPN and ESPN Plus. Now, Scott, I'll start with you. For you, what is the most intriguing final for these PFL fights?
It's definitely Fabian Edwards against Dalton Rosta. I think this one, of all the fights, of the 3 fights, is Alexander Romanov against Oleg Popov, as well as Sullivan Colley against Antonio Carlos Jr. This is the one that feels most like it creates a potential world top 10 fighter. So I'm interested in this one.
How about you, Eric? Do you agree, or do you have a different one?
Dalton Rosta was your guy, Scott, that you picked ahead of this tournament to win it. Now he's in the championship. So
I think it was my dark horse. I don't want to go too far with that.
all right. Well, regardless, I'm giving you some props here.
I'll take it.
Not bad at all. And how is Alexander Romanov even here? Like, that's like the one thing that I just wanted to bring up. How is Alexander Romanov here? This guy has he's gotten away with like groin strike DQ wins multiple times in his MMA career. Maybe it wasn't exactly groin strike each time, but it was something. It was like a foul that resulted in a DQ where he's asking the ref, what happens if I can't continue? Like, do I get
He
the
doesn't
win
have
if I
a
can't
magnet to his groin. It's not his fault. He keeps getting hit there by the heavies.
The optics of him asking, like, what happens if I can't continue? Like, do I get the win? Do I not? Like, he's done that twice. And I pulled up the videos on YouTube, or on Fight Pass and posted them on X. So I just don't know how Romanov's here. He's an underdog. I'm not betting him. And Dalton Rosta, great fight. Fabian Edwards, very, very fun.
Well, there we go. I'm really hoping we don't see another nutshot DQ victory. That would be a very poor way to end the final. So
No more.
no more.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so that is your preview for PFL. We'll see what happens in that heavyweight fight, light heavyweight, and middleweight as well. And then we'll do a little bit of decompressing next week for it. But Scott, because this is another event, give us the event rating for the PFL finals.
Can I guess it? Can I guess the over-under?
Yeah, get real quick. Give me a guess.
27.5. That's the over-under.
27.5 is your over-under? Oh, you should have gone over to the UFC number. This is a 38, guy.
Whoa.
This is bigger than the UFC card. Believe it is the strongest PFL card of the year out of all these 3 finals. They all feel relevant, especially when in terms of a non-UFC competition standpoint. There's plenty of notables down card on that, early card we would call the prelims. Impa Kasanganay is on there. I think there's some really nice talent on this card throughout. So honestly, and also I love that the main card is just the 3 finals. That actually strengthened the card's value in terms of the way my formula works.
I want to say this might be the first PFL one that's been higher than UFC, if not the second, but rarely see that one. So
this is a really strong card.
Yes, it is.
Has Carl Williams is on the prelims as well, former UFC guy.
Honestly, I would go as far as to say too, this is the better card to watch because you can watch it at a normal time instead of having to either wake up super early on the East Coast like a weirdo,
right,
or you got to interrupt your day and potentially risk missing out, what happened, getting spoiled and that kind of thing. This is definitely the better card this week from like almost every metric, except for, let's say, the top end fights, right?
Fair enough. All right. That ties a bow on the fights this weekend. We still have a few more little bits and pieces of MMA news. Scott, why don't you give us quick hits?
Gentlemen, I'm starting quick hits this week outside of the UFC, and it's actually with a debuting fighter But not just any debuting fighter. This is Gable Steveson, the former NCAA and former Olympic wrestling champion, finally set for his MMA debut on September 12th with LFA. 25-year-old is going to face 1-0 fellow prospect Braden Peterson on friendly Minnesota turf for the Golden Gopher legend, who has already tried out pro wrestling and the NFL. Now he's finally into this fighting realm. Back over to the UFC, where I think you usually are hearing most of this quick hits here, right? UFC has released Brian Battle just a few days after he missed weight at middleweight. Didn't end up fighting. This following missing the mark at 170 pounds, his previous fight. Kind of a no-brainer, right? Couple of notable bantamweight fights scheduled in the coming months now. Davis and Figueiredo against Montel Jackson at UFC Rio on October 11th. And before that, we've got Rob Font going against Raul Rosas Jr. Big step up in competition for the young guy at Noche UFC 3 in San Antonio on September 13th. And lastly, UFC Hall of Famer Frankie Edgar. Keeping up this trend from last week, we've got fighters coming out of retirement or fighting at advanced ages. He is going to be making his debut for BKFC in Newark, friendly New Jersey turf on October 4th. He is fighting fellow UFC and also BKFC veteran and New Jerseyan Jimmy Rivera, as per reports.
Alrighty, thank you so much for that, Scott. And guys, it is time for the final round. I did my homework. Matt Hamill and John Jones met in that Octagon 2009 for the Tough 10 finale. And I mean, I've seen the clip happen, of John Jones getting disqualified. Sorry to spoil the fight, but you must have done your homework if you're watching this. And
It's part of the deal.
honestly, it really helped seeing the actual full thing, because I've seen the clips where he gets disqualified and all that, but it's cut up and you don't see the full context of it. I thought that it was all on the referee, and that it was just a dumb call by the ref. Honestly, it was it's his job to call an illegal shot, an elbow like that. And as a result, if the guy can't continue, I don't know if he has any other choice. So I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on that.
You want to jump
Calling
first,
out,
Eric?
calling out your boy Steve Mazzagatti for that one, because he was the referee. and
Knows where that
if
is.
you yeah if you know anything about Steve Mazzagatti, he's no longer doing any
I have
MMA
heard.
events. UFC pretty much kicked him out. They weren't a fan of
He
his.
does timekeeping in Nevada, sir.
Really?
Oh,
Okay.
yes.
Well,
Well,
not
there we go.
refereeing, but still in the mix, which is pretty shocking, honestly. But yeah,
He can
my
keep the
favorite
time.
part
He's
of
doing
the
okay with that.
yeah. My favorite part of the fight was actually the post-fight interviews. Hamill was pretty much talking about how this wasn't the way he wanted to go, whatever. And then John Jones immediately was like, "I'm just grateful to be here." It's very interesting to see both of them kind of react to Hamill won but got absolutely annihilated, and John Jones is just like, "Whatever, I can still breathe, and I'm happy to be here." And he's younger in his career. It's interesting.
Yeah, but Scott, what did you what do you have to say off of my first reactions?
So the thing with that stoppage, you can watch it a billion times, and I've seen it a bunch of times before. And in theory, yes, he put an illegal strike out there, and he couldn't continue. And sort of the right call was that it was a disqualification. But I would argue that he should have stepped in sooner, because it
Oh,
looked
yeah.
like the real reason that Matt Hamill couldn't fight. This is the particular about it. The real reason it looked like Matt Hamill couldn't fight is he couldn't see. The blood was in his eyes, and the blood didn't get in his eyes only because of that elbow. He was already in there before.
Yeah, you could
Frankly
have stopped
speaking,
that
he
fight.
should have been checked out whether he could see or not. Maybe you bring in the doctor in this now. I know it's a tough spot because he's landing, but also there's he's almost leaving gas because John's looking up what do I have to do, right? They should have it should have been handled differently. This is why part of the reason why Steve Mazzagatti is not a referee anymore, and I'm sure he makes a pretty solid timekeeper, and that's where he should be.
Yeah, for letting the boys play too long, essentially.
Yeah, pretty
Much too
much.
long, much too long.
Okay, fair enough. Well, I think it is definitely an interesting assignment for someone to have as an MMA. That was a big moment in MMA lore, so that's an important one and a good homework assignment. So that brings us to our next point. What is our next homework assignment, Scott? What do you have for us?
I've actually got 5 fights assigned for you, and there's a theme
Oh
here.
my
They
lord.
are all the UFC's most dominant title challenger performances. So we're talking about Anderson Silva against Rich Franklin the first time in 2006. Talking about John Jones against Mauricio Shogun Rua in 2011. I was at that fight. You can actually see me in the background if
All
you look.
right.
Uh,
Love it.
Joanna Jędrzejczyk against Carlos Barza in 2015. Amanda Nunes against Misha Tate in 2016, and later that year, the notorious Conor McGregor against Eddie Alvarez.
There we go.
First time we've had Connor on here, I think.
Yes, I
I
think
believe
so.
so.
I'm very excited for that one. This is the we have to come up with a name for it. Maybe we'll figure it out next week, and we got a week to think about it because we got the Shane Carwin experience. So
True.
we'll find some names. But Scott, let's tie the bow on our MMA history in the final round. What happened this week in MMA?
Before we go, I want to tell you it has been 20 years since August 20th, 2005, UFC 54, when Randy the Natural Couture notched the first ever Anaconda choke victory in UFC history. He got it on Mike Van Arsdale.
All right, all right, all right.
Oh, I gotta
Scott.
look that up.
Yeah. Alrighty, Scott, Eric, thank you guys for joining me. And for you at home, please let us know what you thought about your homework assignment. And just if you have any haymakers, let us know in the comments below. But enjoy the fights. If you're waking up early,
Best of
that's
luck if
tough.
you're doing it.
Yeah, best of luck, basically.
Best of luck.
Alrighty, we will catch you next week.